All right, so now we have to figure out what types of thesis statements exist, right? There are four types and three ones that you'll be pretty much writing throughout your entire college career if you haven't already. The four types, the one is analytical thesis, right? You have the analytical thesis statement, you have the expository or explanatory thesis statement, you have the argumentative or evaluative thesis statement, and then you have the implied thesis. All of these are very important categories, right? So what you want to look at is what these mean, right? Technically, every thesis is, this, as I just said, is an argument, right? So that third category is a bit misleading, right? But the division simply shows what types of essays you will write in this setting. So let's look at them individually. The analytical thesis is a breakdown, right? In an analytical paper, you are breaking down an issue or idea into its component parts and presenting this breakdown to your audience. So an analytical thesis statement will explain what you're analyzing, the parts of your analysis, the order in which you'll be presenting your analysis. So, example here, right? So, in the role of food in times of war, Con McGraw relies on hasty generalizations of many cultures to prove his argument. So what we're doing here is, what is he analyzing, right? This author will be analyzing the hasty generalizations that McGraw makes in this essay, The Role of Food in Times of War. So we're not judging, there's no judgment call. He's not saying that it's a poorly written article or a successfully written article. What this author is doing is she is just simply stating that, okay, in this essay, hasty generalizations of cultures exist, and here's where they exist. So there's not a judgment call, and that's going to be the main difference between analytical and evaluative. So here, right, what does this author has to prove, right? Well, this author has to prove that McGraw in fact relies on hasty generalizations. So there's still an argument, but what this person is going to be doing is breaking down McGraw's use of hasty generalizations in his essay, right? And of course probably discuss why they exist. The expository or explanatory thesis is, of course, an explanation, right? So, in an expository paper, you're going to explain something to your audience. So, what will you tell your audience? What you're going to explain, obviously, the categories you're using to organize your explanation, and, of course, the order in which you'll be presenting your categories. So, for example, if I'm going to still talk about an essay, right? I could actually use an explanatory thesis as well. I could say something like Con McGraw's The Role of Food in Times of War is an example of literary criticism. So what am I doing here? I have to define my terms. I have to define what literary criticism is and how, and this is where the argument comes in, how this essay, The Role of Food in Times of War, fits into the category of literary criticism. So I'm still making an argument. It's not as abrasive as kind of a judgmental based argument or a critique, but I still have to prove something to my audience, right? I still have to prove to you that this essay is an example of literary criticism and not an example of a cooking, essay or some sort of food recipe, right? And so there is still a debate there, even when you try to explain something. Now, in the evaluative or argumentative thesis statement, what you're doing here is you're making a claim about a topic, and then, of course, justifying this claim with reasons and evidence. This claim could be an opinion, a policy proposal, an evaluation, a cause and effect statement, or any type of interpretation. So, an argumentative thesis, of course, will state your claim and assertion in a clear way. It will also somewhat, whether it's the evidence or reasons, or policy, right? Something will be there to support it, and of course the order in which you present your reasons and evidence. So what I could do to turn that analytical thesis into an evaluative thesis is simply say this: in the role of food in times of war, Con McGraw relies too heavily on hasty generalizations of many culture to prove his weak argument. The too heavily and weak, just those three words, now create an argument and evaluation, right? Because now I'm judging, right? Instead of saying that he relies on hasty generalizations analytically, I am now evaluatively saying he relies too heavily on them and that he has a weak argument. So these simple words, right, now create a judgment. And that's the main difference between the argumentative thesis statement or the evaluative thesis versus the analytical one. In every essay we'll write will be pretty much following the evaluative and argumentative thesis. However, you will still need to use analysis, right, in many cases. The last one is an applied thesis, and you should never have an applied thesis in this class, and typically in your college courses you would never have an applied thesis, but it does exist, and many authors do not have a direct statement in their academic essays. Now, why is that? Well, an applied thesis is an indirect and does not specifically state a set thesis or overall point. But here's why I would use it. Audiences can infer what the essay will be about or what it was about. They use this because they want the reader to come to his or her own conclusions rather than stating their opinion to influence others. They want the reader to come to his or her own conclusions about the matter at hand. This essay will still be coherent. It will still make a point. And pretty much, even if it's not an essay, most mainstream writing, for example, journal articles, right, if newspaper articles, things like that, right, if you're writing in journalism, right, typically you're not going to have, this event is important, so you must read about it. You're going to have this implied thesis saying that this event is important, so you should read, but you're never actually specifically going to state that. And so in the academic setting, why we use this one is, of course, again, to make people come to their own decisions. So this is an example from a real essay, right? This is Myra Mann's How Do You Know It's Good? And this is her introductory paragraph. Suppose there were no critics to tell us how to react to a picture, a play, or a new composition of music. Suppose we wandered innocent as the dawn into an art exhibition of unsigned paintings. By what standards, by what values would we decide whether they were good or bad, talented or untalented, success or failures? How can we ever know what we think is right? Well, what she's doing here, and again, because notice how she's asking questions rather than giving us clear statements. Her whole essay is simply asking the audience to think about how we view art, why we think good movies are good movies, why we think bad movies are bad movies. And so she doesn't want to say this is what a bad movie is, this is what a good movie is, right? What she's doing is much more complex. She wants you to think about how you think about art, right? And that's a much more complex argument. And how does she accomplish this? Well, through the implied thesis. And that's what's crucial, is there are cases and many good reasons why an author would use that implied thesis statement. So, like the essay itself, that should have one singular focus. All the paragraphs should also have a singular focus as well. So paragraphs function the same way as an essay. Each supporting paragraph should follow a clear topic sentence, which is, of course, the paragraph's thesis, which also echoes the main essay's thesis. Each paragraph should contain one example or one point, right? And that's crucial, right, to understand. And so in order to continue along with that thesis statement, you have, of course, supporting paragraphs. And so paragraphs will always vary in length, but they should follow this basic structure. You should have a topic sentence, you should have the point or example or quote you're using to prove it, and then you should have a synthesis sentence or sentences, right? So no matter what, every paragraph should have at least 3 sentences. Most paragraphs will have many more sentences, but every paragraph in the academic setting has to have 3 sentences. It has to have that topic sentence argument, it has to have a point or example that helps prove that argument, and then you have to have a synthesis sentence. So, the topic sentence is your own assertion, and the synthesis sentence is your own analysis. What we have here is from you or a source, right? And so, your ideas should frame the paragraph by providing, of course, any sort of point or example or quote. You will, of course, need transitions, but this basic structure is necessary for all supporting paragraphs, and you really have to, remember this basic structure. Topic sentence argument, the example you use to prove that argument, and then the synthesis, how you reflect back to your thesis. And so this is kind of the basic structure that all paragraphs should follow. Now, the best way to flow from paragraph to paragraph is, of course, to have a transition. And what you want to do in that topic sentence is use a 3-point system. So you connect your new paragraph to your previous one. You connect your new paragraph to the overall thesis. And by doing so, or after these kind of connections, you introduce the paragraph's main argument and main point. But there is a 3-point system for your topic sentence, right? Again, you connect it to the previous paragraph, you connect it to the overall thesis, and by doing these two components, or after these two aspects, you present the main point of the paragraph. So, let's give an example. Any topic sentence should basically follow this pattern. So some sort of transition, right? Similar to the previous paragraph's idea, this new idea works by. So, for example, this comes from a real essay. I should have put the title, but here's the topic sentence. Besides ridding unnecessary intake of toxins, organic foods are healthier to eat because they contain higher amount of antioxidants. Note how you could clearly tell what the previous paragraph's about, what the overall thesis is, and what this new paragraph's about. So let's break this down. Right? So, from this isolated topic sentence, we can determine that the previous paragraph discussed toxins related to inorganic foods. The main thesis is organic foods are healthier, right? And then this new paragraph will examine the antioxidants issue. So if we go back, right, we could clearly see that. Besides ridding unnecessary intake of toxins, organic foods are healthier to eat because they contain higher amount of antioxidants. So the previous paragraph talked about the intake of toxins. The thesis itself is something about organic foods are healthier to eat. And then this new paragraph will talk about the higher amounts of antioxidants. So we have this clear three-point structure, right? And so every topic sentence should follow this way: the connecting point from a previous paragraph, a connecting point or some sort of echo to the thesis, and then the new idea that you will try to prove. The structure to academic essays is formulaic, and that's a good thing, right? Once you grasp the essential components, you can use them in creative ways. So your writing shouldn't be formulaic, but the basic methodology, the basic formula to an essay is very simple. You give us a thesis statement, you prove it throughout your entire essay. Each paragraph has a very specific formula: topic, sentence, support, synthesis. Right? The academic essay offers you the opportunity to explore your opinions and observations, but you must accomplish this task through logical progression and reasonable argumentation. Whether you are analyzing, evaluating, or arguing, your academic essay allows you to investigate the how and why of a topic in order to present your insights ideas. So the essay is very important, right? And it begins, of course, the foundational building blocks of your essay are your thesis and then your topic sentences, because they're the ones that develop that thesis. And those are the most argumentative sentences in your entire essay: the thesis and those topic sentences. And these are the ways we connect from paragraph to paragraph, and these are the ways that you extend your thesis argument throughout every paragraph, is through those topic sentences. Now, if you have any questions, always email. Again, if you need an alternative format, always ask.